Aloha, my name is Julie Mitchell, and I am the Executive Director here at Ikahi Mediation Center. We are a nonprofit community mediation center. Our mission is to empower people to come together, to talk and to listen, to explore options and to find their own best solutions. To achieve this mission, we offer mediation, facilitations, and trainings like this one to strengthen the ability of diverse individuals and groups to resolve interpersonal conflicts and community issues. We were founded in 1983 as a program of the Island of Hawaii YMCA, and we became our own independent nonprofit in 2006. We do hold this brown bag lunch series every third Thursday at 12 noon on Zoom, and you need to just register each time on Eventbrite to receive the Zoom link. So our next speaker, I'll talk about in a little bit. I would like to share with you folks the biggest event that we have coming up, our annual basic mediation training. That is going to be starting on March 19th. And this 4-day Zoom training, right now it's on Zoom, is how our professionally trained volunteer mediators get their start. And I do see on our Zoom a few of our mediators, as well as a few folks who will be taking the mediation training coming up. So we invite you to learn the skills that mediators use to benefit you in your personal and professional life. And if you are interested in becoming a mediator, this would be a good start. Our mediator pool is made up of professionally trained volunteers who help other community members. If that's interesting to you, please do feel free to check it out. I will put in the link also a link to our basic mediation training if you want to check that out. We will be asking you to fill a short online survey at the end. I will put the link in the chat, and we'll also email that to you, and that helps with our grant funding for this free program. So at the end, we send out a video, the slides, and other information from this talk. And if you're not sure we have your email address, like if you didn't register in their normal way or you're someone's guest, just put it in the chat box to me and I will get that to you. March 17th is the date of the next brown bag, and our speaker is Diane Petropoulos. She is actually the trainer for basic mediation training, and she's going to be talking on managing conflict in your workplace with emotional intelligence. So I will put that also in the chat. Without further ado, let me introduce our speaker. We're very excited to welcome Suzanne Quinney. Am I saying that right, Suzanne? Okay, who specializes in appreciative and strength-based approaches, facilitating seminars and team events. She is the co-author of highly recommended training resources and articles on Appreciative Inquiry. She speaks at national events and international conferences. And we were pleased to welcome her through our last speaker, Joan Schaefer, who was talking on the power of positivity. Thank you, Joan. In 2019, Suzanne moved back to live in Northeast Scotland, where she is part of the Findhorn intentional community. And on a personal note, she likes sci-fi, so do I, community singing and river swimming in warm weather, which I'm not sure what that means exactly because it's Scotland.
Oh, you can, because I got to last of my thing.
Let's see, someone came off of mute. I'm going to mute them. Okay, great. Suzanne, please take it away.
Hi everyone, it's very nice to be talking to people in Hawaii. It's 10 o'clock in the evening here in Scotland, and I'm very well wrapped up, the Scottish weather, hence my reference to swimming in the warm weather. But it's nice to see those of you that I can see looking summery and yeah, lovely. My husband Tim and I, we set up Appreciating People quite a long time ago, actually. I think it was 2006. So we've been involved in this field for a long time, and actually the lovely thing is I never get tired of it. I really love doing this work and sharing it with other people. So I've got some slides I'm going to go through. And it's going to be quite a compressed session. I mean, we generally do 2 days training in appreciative inquiry, so there's quite a lot in there. But this hopefully will give you a taste, or some of you might know some already, and it might just supplement. I'd like to share a few practical examples of what we've done where, as I go through the slides too, and I'm open to any questions you might have in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and go on to PowerPoint. Now, how's that, Julie? Is that okay? Great, thank you. Right, so I'm going to talk to you about appreciative inquiry and also a programme, a quite widespread programme in our National Health Service called Learning from Excellence. So I'll explain that a little bit more in the slides. And I left up those 3 things: care, community and connection. They were the byline for some work I did recently training staff in a local authority. And I just thought they were 3 great C's, which seem to speak to us, I think, all the time, certainly in these times as well. Perhaps I should have put a C for COVID in. Okay. And just to show you, here we go. What's it doing? There we go. One of the things about appreciative inquiry is that it's meant to be kind of fun, in the moment, experiential. So this would just be a little example of how we might begin a session, asking people on this sheep scale, how do you feel today? Which sheep most resonates with your inner feelings? I think mine is probably a 7. You know, because I'm because it's quite late at night and, oh, well, I managed all this well enough. I'm hiding a little bit behind the door. But anyway, if you want to think for yourself, and there's lots of fun things like this. Yeah, it's about telling stories, swapping, sharing how we feel. So it's lovely that this follows Joan's talk on positive psychology, and then you've got emotional intelligence next month. It feels like a really lovely connection between them. Okay, so appreciative inquiry, really it's 2 components, make it very straightforward. The idea, the appreciative bit is that when we appreciate something, it increases in value. We use that term economically, we use it when we speak about buildings or art, but also we can use it to speak about emotions and well-being and strengths. So this is about how do we appreciate stuff so that its value can be bigger, both for us and for the other person. And then the inquiry bit is that element in which we seek to understand a topic. So we choose a topic. You can do appreciative inquiry into management, into well-being, into team building, into patient engagement. You just choose your topic and you align the appreciative framework behind that topic. So once you've got your topic, you don't actually really need to use the term appreciative inquiry. It's good to use in training, and you probably will find that as I go through the slides, you're already doing some of these things, or you know this already. And this is just a particular framework that makes it easy in organizations to share about it, to train people in it, to include it in induction. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you'll probably know already or be intuitively aligned to. And then the other element which I really like about it is that it allows us, I think, to combine heart and mind at work. The appreciative bit brings in the heart and the inquiry bit brings in the mind. And that allows us to be more wholehearted at both at work and at home. So it's a lovely combination that it offers to us. So that idea, just to elaborate really, that appreciation is almost like watering something, like encouraging it to flourish and to grow. And the inquiry bit is about magnifying and amplifying something and also bringing it into focus, focusing on the small as well as the big. So these are some quotes which I've taken from David Kuberreider, who was the person who first kind of came up with this concept and philosophy. And I'll explain a little bit more about how he began that. But these 3 quotes sum it up for me. So it's the cooperative search for the best in people, their organizations, and the world around them. And don't underestimate just how different that is, about that idea about looking for the best, because we are so conditioned to look for the problem so that we can solve it. So that it is actually a really big mindset shift to start looking for the best. And it has a systematic process. So we are using that framework systematically to discover what gives a system life when it's most effective and capable in whatever classification you want to look at. And so at its heart is the art and practice of asking questions that strengthen a system and its positive potential. And David Cooperrider was a PhD student in organizational development in the 80s. He was completing his PhD, and he went to go and do a study at an organization nearby. And mostly organization development practitioners were focused on helping people and organizations and teams solve problems. But they always started with a problem. Either they were invited in to solve a problem, or they were invited in to see what were the problems that needed solving. Whereas David, when he went to visit this clinic, and he came back from his first visit and he said, this clinic works so well, I want to know what makes it work well. And he was fortunate that his supervisor supported him, because although it doesn't sound very radical, it was a major paradigm shift. And then once David started talking about the results he got from approaching his PhD in that way, and he started sharing his material, people just got it intuitively, the value that it could provide, and started using it themselves. And from the very beginning, David was very freely encouraging people to use it, to adapt it, to innovate and invent and make it their own. So it's a very sort of creative and fluid frame of knowledge, I think. And you're pretty well, it's very open sourced. You can Google Appreciative Inquiry on any topic and you'll probably get something back on it. So just thinking a little bit about the strength-based approach, because some people often say, yeah, but we need to focus on our reality that's problems. And so this is a recent diagram that an AI colleague shared with us. So in the red, he's got, a definition of reality, which is picking up all the things that aren't okay. And they're the things that need fixing. But by focusing only on that red circle, we miss all the strengths and all the attributes that are in the green, which actually help those problems get solved. So by putting our attention into the green, the red tends to get sorted out in its own way and time sometimes, and sometimes things get done in an unexpected way. So there has to be a certain amount of flexibility in this process. But it's really lovely to think how many resources there are in that outer green circle that we can draw on. Another way of looking at this approach is it's an asset-based approach as opposed to being deficit-based. So again, we're sort of turning a paradigm a bit on its head. And I spent my sort of early years, my career, I was an overseas aid worker, working for organizations like Oxfam and small charities. And that world, certainly then in the 80s and 90s, it always also began with these countries, these societies, these villages, I was mostly in Africa, they've got all these problems and they need experts to fix them. And I could never really find a framework of working which I felt, validated everybody equally. And I only found Appreciative Inquiry after I'd left that field. I think if I'd found Appreciative Inquiry then, I would probably have stayed in it longer, because it has that ability to not only say, let's look at what are all the assets that this community has, and then see how we can use them to make their life better in a way that they want. When we're starting from a deficit-based premise, we're the ones who identify the problems, and then we decide on the solutions that will fix them. And they may not be the ones that the community wanted sorted, and they may not want the solutions that get provided in that way. You know, very classic example from my time in East Africa. The government of Sudan received some aid from Russia to help them improve their airport. And when they unloaded it, they found snowplows in there. So, you know, they just transplanted one problem fixing approach to a completely different destination. So there are many examples of that in the aid world. So we're looking at an asset-based approach here. So this is nice because it builds a bit on what Joan did last month. But what we're looking at is, because sometimes people say, oh, well, that's all very well to be positive, but what does it actually do? And so there are a few things that it does which we feel are really important. And of those, one of the ones that's really important is to counter our negative bias. It appears from all sorts of research and writing that we seem to be hardwired to focus more on the negative. We remember it longer, we pay more attention to it, we talk more about it to other people. If you just reflect on your daily conversations, on what's happening in the news media, you'll see that negative bias in action. So in order to be, we have to counter that almost deliberately, to be aware that that's what we're tending to do, and then how can we do something differently? So I've got a nice phrase, which is a quote from Rick Hanson, who's a really great teacher and writer on this field. He says that the brain is like Teflon for the positive and Velcro for the negative. And I just feel that's such a vivid description of what tends to be happening in our brains. You know, we remember the thing, we might have had a very successful day at work and we'll go home and we'll think, oh yeah, but I didn't do that. Or I forgot to say something to that person. That's what our mind will tend to go on. So it's those tendencies that we want to shift a little bit. There are many benefits of being positive. I mean, Joan talked a lot about those in the last session, but I tend to talk about them in terms of that they have an effect on our physical body, on our biochemistry, our creativity, our ability to connect with others. So all of those are things that we want to enhance and support. And we're looking at a desirable positivity ratio. So it's worth looking, what is my normal ratio of comments, either outside to the world or inside in my own head? Am I, you know, how many negative to how many positive am I generally engaging in? And the desirable one would be between 3 and 5 positive comments to 1 negative. So just bearing that ratio in mind, it might be interesting to look and see what your current ratio is and if you want to lift it in any way. There's a couple of lovely sayings that we have a saying in the UK. I don't know if you used it there, but we say, oh, where did it all go so wrong? And so one of the turnarounds of that phrase is, where did it all go right? So many things go right, actually, and we just let them slip by and we focus on what's gone wrong. So let's focus on what's going right. Start with what's strong, not what's wrong. That's a phrase that's often used when this approach is used in community development. There's a nice visual description of what our brain is quite often doing. It's looking for the one negative thing or the one bad thing and ignoring the whole pile of good. So just what we find in terms of work and organizations, being positive supports individual and team performance and morale. It improves, for example, it improves the diagnosis of doctors, how people perform in sales. So there's lots of reasons which also have financial value for organizations, which make it worth their while supporting these things. It helps people be creative and efficient. And it helps us counter that negative bias. So the quote that I have here on this one is, neurons that fire together wire together. So basically, once our brain gets into habits and patterns, it tends to just keep going down that route. So in order to perhaps develop some new neural pathways, we need to practice them and build that pathway so that it becomes then more habitual. So to that end, we've, as an organisation, we've produced a few appreciative journals, because we feel that appreciative journaling is one way that you can really start getting involved in this aspect of the brain. So I wanted to do a little demonstration here. Normally, when we have longer, we'd like to do breakout rooms and get you to have some appreciative conversations yourself. But as it's a relatively short period of time, and I also know that a lot of you are having your lunch, I asked Julie if she would be okay, and we'll do a little demonstration of an appreciative conversation. So Julie, I've got some questions for you. So yeah, I'd love to hear your answers. I'll read the question out and then hear from you. So can you tell me about a moment or a piece of work that you were involved with that went well?
Okay, let me see. Am I unmuted and you can hear me okay now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Excellent, great. So I did this long multi-party mediation that had a lot of moving parts, and there was a lot of passion and a lot of contention. You know, people in mediation, they really care deeply about the situations that bring them here, and they aren't able to settle the matter themselves, so they seek out, you know, a third party to try to help facilitate this dialogue and problem solving. And you know, when we work to try to solve the problem together, you know, like we consulted some outside experts that could chime in on the concerns that the parties had, and then they were able to see the other person's concerns as time went on, and that enabled us to successfully resolve the matter, which felt like a big deal.
Yes, that sounds lovely, and yeah, very successful. Thank you. So what do you think were the key elements that made that go so well?
Well, I mean, number one, using the skills I was taught as a mediator, like I was able to listen deeply and then help bring about the issues that, you know, bring out the issues, surface the issues that mattered, and then trying to address the underlying concerns that everyone had, and then looking for areas of common ground. And you know, once those really deep down concerns are able to surface, it allows people to look for creative solutions to address issues in like a more lasting and satisfying way, instead of just sort of staying on the surface of why I'm angry. You know, I'm angry. Well, why are you angry? Well, why underneath that? Why underneath that?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great list. Can you tell me about 3 strengths of yours that make you a good mediator?
Summarizing what I've heard, you know, to show that I care and understand them. Asking curious questions to tease out, you know, what those underlying concerns are. And one of my favorite new terms from Kenneth Cloak, he's a, you know, big deal in the mediation world, called being omnipartial. So that means that I'm on everyone's side.
Oh, nice. Yeah, nice phrase. Thank you. And what do you value about your role in the Mediation Center?
Well, I mean, it's exciting to be a part of an organization whose mission is to do good in the world. I love being able to help people and organizations to increase communication competencies, to increase conflict prevention and resolution strategies, to increase self-determination in outcomes rather than, you know, the relying on authority figures. I like to empower people. I want them to find their own best solutions, not necessarily my solutions, but what is going to work for the people in front of me.
Yes, well, that's very inspiring to hear that. Thank you. And can you share a way that you might bring any learning from this admittedly short conversation into your work?
Well, I mean, I think that based on what you were saying about being positive, I could probably share more, you know, personal experiences from both like my life and my work to inspire other people to, like, I'm clearly passionate about this and I like the work, and I could use some of these stories to talk to maybe my staff or my volunteers or board. I could use it with our clients and out in the community. I think people, people seek hope, and helping people communicate better, helping people manage conflicts in productive ways. It's hopeful.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I'm so glad this is recorded, because I just feel that the things you shared then are really powerful. And it's also a lovely illustration of the power of stories, which is the big thing in appreciative inquiry. Stories are what people can relate to, they resonate with, they're memorable. Yeah, so I love that you picked that up. So for our audience, this is a very short version of an appreciative conversation. Usually there'd be a couple more questions, and I often do these kind of conversations with a new client when I'm wanting to learn what the setting is and what it is they most want from this work. And I would always ask somebody for 45 minutes. So we'd go into a lot more depth in those questions then. But it gives people a flavour, and it highlights some lovely overlap, because you began with talking about a strength of listening, and then this slide is also got that lovely quote from Krishnamurti about the power of this kind of listening. And I've got a few more. Okay, go on. Nice one. There we go. So these appreciative conversations or interviews, it doesn't matter what you call them, they're at the heart of the AI philosophy, but also any AI process has these kind of conversations which everyone takes part in. Ideally, it's a whole system approach, and everybody in the system would have the chance to answer these questions and to hear another person answer them. So we're looking at the good, the positive, what worked and how it made you feel. And this willingness to bring in feelings, I think, is one of the things which helps make it a good place for emotional intelligence, really, and building emotional intelligence within this process. And we're drawing on personal stories and hopefully prompting new insights in either the listener or in the speaker. So thank you very much, Julie, for being willing to do that. I'll carry on with slides. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing all right, aren't we? Yeah. So what we're looking at in these conversations, we're looking to know more about the positive core. The positive core, whether that is of an organisation, a team, a community, or an individual. We've done this kind of work in neighbourhoods in the UK, where we've been invited in to help a neighbourhood do some planning or do some improvements. And we start with this. In companies also, we start looking, so what is the positive core at the moment? So really, we're asking questions about every point on that star in our conversations, but we've chosen a topic. The questions I did with Julie were fairly loose. There was a little bit of an orientation towards mediation, but when we were doing, if we were doing this with the client, we'd have a very specific topic that they would want to make the focus of those questions, that they would want to both learn more about what they were doing well and discover how they could do it better. I wanted to refer, conversations worth having is obviously a great phrase for what we're doing and what we're talking about. It's also a really great resource, and I put their website up. There's a book. I meant to have the book out. Oh well. They've got a lovely book which is very accessible and easy to read about applying the process of appreciative inquiry to conversations. And this is one of their diagrams. And it's just a lovely summary of the 4 kinds of conversations we could be having. And let's have a look at what they are. So down in the bottom right, you've got statement-based depreciative conversations, which tend to be on the whole a bit destructive. Like, I really hate the way you leave the door open all the time. That's not going to get us very far. Although I have been known to say that to my husband. And then critical conversations, which are both depreciative and inquiry based. So it's like, why do you always talk like that? That's a kind of example of that conversation. And then statement based appreciative is the affirmative conversations, which could be anything like, I really love the painting behind your desk, Julie. I mentioned that to you earlier. And those are appreciative statements, basically. And it's great to make them, and they can really contribute and support to all sorts of things. And then the 4th kind of conversation is the appreciative and the inquiry based. So those are what that book's describing as conversations worth having. And those are what we're looking to foster and illuminate in all our AI practice. So I think it's a nice spectrum to look at. So within the Appreciative Inquiry framework, there's not many tools actually. So the first tool is the conversation, which we touched on briefly. The next one is called the 5D cycle. So in the 5Ds, we have, first of all, we have definition at the top, which is where you choose your topic. So that could be about mediation, that could be a topic. It could be about team performance, whatever the thing is that you want to learn more about. So you choose your topic, and then discovery, you discover the best of what is and what has been. And that's mostly done through those kind of paired conversations. And then in dream, you are imagining the best of what could be. And it's in the dream phase that it becomes a good place for us to look at what is it that we want more of or that we want less of. So if I was to say, you know, imagine that the Mediation Center in a year's time has grown in a way that meets its strategic plan, you know, what would you be doing? What would you be doing differently? How would you have got there? That's a dream question. I had it, you know, years ago when I started working from home, and I needed an office and I had a little study that wasn't going to work. So I thought we converted the loft in the house. And I did that. So imagine, what would it be like if I had a really lovely, airy, bright space to work in? How would I get to it? What would I do? Well, you know, what would I look like? How would I do the conversion? And then you sort of allow it all to come into place once you've dreamt it. And then the design is determining what should be. How can we bring this into action? What are the methods that will do that? What will the things we'll need to do, the next steps? And destiny and delivery is about how can we maintain it? How can we keep it in the system, keep it flowing, keep the whole process appreciative? So that's like a whistle-stop tour of the 5Ds. And then the other tool in the Appreciative Inquiry framework is called a SAW. And a SAW is actually an appreciative version of a SWOT, which some of you might know. A SWOT form of analysis which talks about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And in this case, we've kept the strengths and the opportunities, but A is for aspirations. What are we aspiring towards? What's our vision? And R is for what are our resources and what are the resources we need to get to our aspiration, and what are the results we're going to be looking for and how will we measure them. So both of those tools are very sort of practical and accessible. And again, you can find lots of examples of them on the internet. You can also, our website has a few different examples, things you can download from our downloadable section if you want to practice more at it. And then I said to Julie that I'd talk a little bit about learning from excellence because it's a practical example of how appreciative inquiry has been applied and used. So in the NHS in the UK, there's a massive concern and focus on error and how to avoid it. So what that means is whenever there's some kind of mistake or failure, which might have had serious consequences as well. So it's not that, I'm not saying that shouldn't be looked at, but the focus became so exclusively looking at error and inquiring into it and attributing blame. And in that kind of process, learning more or less stops. People become fearful. Their bodies tend to freeze and close down the moment they think there's going to be an inquiry into something they've done from this perspective. And because of this, many people in the NHS seeing the detrimental effects of this emphasis on error. Meanwhile, you know, probably 96% of things in the NHS go well, and no one was looking at that. So the Learning from Excellence movement was born in order to look at what was going on that was good, How was it being done? Who was doing it? How could we do more of it? How could we share learning from it? So the hospitals, many hospitals have now joined into this system, and they have some form of positive reporting where a person or a team will give an excellence report on something they've seen that's gone well. A patient also might be somebody who's reporting. And those reports, obviously they have an amazing effect on people's morale and culture and well-being. I remember hearing one person who worked in theatres saying that since they'd introduced their positive reporting system, they had reduced their need for locums, temporary staff, by 50%. So it had stabilized their team in a really significant way, the fact that their culture had had this lift. And then what the next part of having done the positive reporting is to use an appreciative inquiry framework into learning more about it. How did it happen? What helped it happen? How can we help more people to learn from it and do more of those initiatives? So these are quotes from the Learning from Excellence website and a summary of what they're doing. And there's a blog, and that will also link you to the Learning from Excellence website itself, anybody who'd like to look at it more. I thought I'd also share another couple of areas where I've used appreciative inquiry. I've got some, yes, so I've got a few different things that I put on that list. One of my early pieces of work was with the homeless community. Particularly, I was working with homeless hostels in London, where I went and did some initial work, and the hostel residents that I talked to, they were almost saying to me that they were tired of, basically, as soon as every professional that they interacted with asked them, so what was the problem that led to you being on the streets? So the whole focus of the way in which they were being worked with was looking at the problems. And I started thinking, so how would it be if we talked about strengths of people on the street? Because they all have their strengths. And out of that arose a program of training staff in appreciative inquiry, and then also using appreciative inquiry to work with residents. And the great thing about the AI approach is that it's very peer-based. It's very easy to make it a peer-based system. So I would typically work with a staff member supporting me, and then perhaps 10 or 12 residents who then had conversations with each other. So then when they went back to the hostel together, they had a bit of a shared language. They could support each other. I remember one saying, I'm going to spot you when you're negative next time in the hostel. So they had a little bit of a culture that they could build up. It's not so easy to do this on your own, given how our prevailing culture has a different focus. So where possible, if you can help people do things in small groups, I think it lands better. We've worked supporting communities and neighbourhoods. We do away days for organisations. It's a great thing to weave into supervision and appraisals to make them strength-based, discovering what's gone well. Everybody seems to enjoy that. Organisational planning, team building. It's a great way to do merging organisations or teams, because you can make the whole merger starting from people's strengths and their vision for what they want to achieve collectively. And it fits really well with personal development and coaching. If you look online, you'll see lots of examples and resources of appreciative coaching material and appreciative supervision. So, am I doing all right for time? Let me just see. This is just to illuminate for you that underneath this philosophy, there are some very deep principles. And in fact, books are written just on those principles. But here I'm just going to share a few of them with you in the form of these assumptions. But there's a lot that kind of sort of lying behind them. So in every situation, something works. What we focus on becomes our reality. That's a really interesting thing to play with. What I'd invite you to do, if you like to know more about this, is to become an explorer yourself, an appreciative explorer. Try these things out. See how people respond to you if you ask different kind of questions. See how you feel inside if you focus on something different than you might normally focus on. So if we focus on possibilities, we will find them. And if we focus on problems, we'll find them. So I think you'll easily see the truth of that. So the way we ask questions creates or denies possibilities. So, I don't know, take some joy in being curious about how you ask questions, how they land, what comes back, and see how you might be creating or denying possibilities in your conversations. And a lot of that can be kind of connected into this phrase: the language you use creates our reality. And a lot of these principles you'll find films actually, and films demonstrate quite a lot of these, and you know what to look for, and talks, but also advertising and marketing agencies, they know all this and they use it all the time. So anyway, I've just got a short film clip which illustrates this. So if I stop sharing, and we hope the technology works, Julie's going to share the film.
Wait.
You're muted, Julie.
Okay, wait, I'm unmuting, but I'm also trying to make it small enough that I can hit start and then I can make it bigger again.
Does the language we speak shape the way we think? These are the Kuuk-Thaayorre people. They live in Pomporao at the very west edge of Cape York. In Kuuk-Thaayorre, they don't use words like left and right. And instead, everything is in cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. You would say something like, oh, there's an ant on your southwest leg. Or move your cup to the north-northeast a little bit. In fact, the way that you say hello in Kuuk-Thaayorre is, which way are we going? And the answer should be north-northeast in the far distance. How about you? People who speak languages like this stay oriented really, really well. They stay oriented better than we used to think humans could. We used to think that humans were worse than other creatures because some biological excuse. Oh, we don't have magnets in our beaks or in our scales. No. If your language and your culture trains you to do it, actually, you can do it. Lots of languages have grammatical gender. So every noun gets assigned a gender, often masculine or feminine, and these genders differ across languages. Could this have any consequence for how people think? Actually, it turns out that's the case. So if you ask German and Spanish speakers to say, describe a bridge, like the one here, bridge happens to be grammatically feminine in German, grammatically masculine in Spanish. German speakers are more likely to say bridges are beautiful, elegant, and stereotypically feminine words, whereas Spanish speakers will be more likely to say they're strong or long, these masculine words. Languages also differ in how they describe events. In English, it's fine to say he broke the vase. In a language like Spanish, you might be more likely to say the vase broke or the vase broke itself. If it's an accident, you wouldn't say that someone did it. In English, quite weirdly, we can even say things like, I broke my arm. Now, in lots of languages, you couldn't use that construction unless you are a lunatic and you went out looking to break your arm and you succeeded. People who speak different languages will pay attention to different things depending on what their language usually requires them to do. And that gives you the opportunity to ask, why do I think the way that I do? How could I think differently? And also, what thoughts do I wish to create?
Thank you, Julie. I mean, that's just a very short little invitation really into our world of language and how it sort of helps us create our reality and how it might also influence our thinking and our communication. These are really just little tasters I'm offering you here. So I'll go back to the last few slides. Yes, I'm going to just... Right. Okay, I'm going to just skip that. I think we're just running a bit out of time now, so I'm going to just move to these. So just in summary, so this is, I like this. Recently a friend shared this, an AI friend, a problem dissolving approach as opposed to a problem solving approach. It also, I find that it helps us create spaciousness. We often might think we're too busy to focus on what's working well. but actually the doing of that gives a feeling of spaciousness for ourselves and in our communication and conversations with others. So, you know, try that out. And then it supports emotional intelligence, which I've also mentioned. So if you want to have a go with any of this, I think one of the things that's really helpful is to set your intention before you enter a meeting or an event, and set it for a positive intention of some kind, and then see how you setting that intention might influence then how you experience the event. If you're going to actually do any appreciative conversations with people, it often is helpful to set the scene a little bit, because this can be so unfamiliar territory to some people that they need to have a little bit of warning that this conversation is going to be a little bit different from the ones you normally have. You know, we're going to look at the positive, and we might get sidetracked into the negative and how terrible everything is, but I'm going to come back to also what's going well. So you might want to look at doing that. You could try out some discovery questions, a bit like the ones I asked Julie at the beginning of the session. You can develop your appreciative mindset. We think it's almost like a muscle, an appreciative muscle, and it really does start building with practice. So going back to the D's again, you can experiment with imagining questions. I always remember somebody that I was training, and she came in one day, she said, her son was so stressed about his exams. He was at the end of his school life, and he felt like if he didn't do well in these exams. And she just said to him, look, imagine it's the end of the summer, you're heading off to university, you're feeling really excited about this new part of your life. And just giving him something else to think about in that moment helped him take his attention off his stress and nervousness. So just a lovely little examples like that. And then I've just got a few quotes that I found recently that I love, which are emphasizing the power of gratitude. So this one from Lionel Hampton: when memory is stored in the heart and not the mind. That's gratitude. The mind creates the abyss and the heart crosses it. And the last one is gratitude is the wine of the soul. Go on, get drunk. That comes from Rumi. So that I found this recently, a very bright video, but when you look for the good in others, you discover the good within yourself. That seems to sum up one of our purposes, really, I think, in using this work. So I think we've got a little bit of time for questions. And I also had a suggestion that if people wanted to put something into the chat about something they might do differently or that they would apply practically after this. And thank you to the people who put something in the chat about the sheep scale at the beginning. That was lovely to see your responses. It's just a lot going on when you're sharing the screen and moving slides on for me to comment earlier. Julie, what do you think?
I see one question that says, do you find that problem-solving orientation is noticeably affected by gender, age, occupation, etc.?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Rarely, you know, mostly it's really, it seems to land in most places. I can only think of one moment where people refused to do an appreciative inquiry conversation, and it was in a GP surgery, and it was the receptionists who felt, and because we had GPs and nurses and everybody was in the room, and the receptionists felt so uncomfortable at the idea of talking to people, you know, that were not in their band. That comes out of our sort of hierarchical NHS system. And I've even found team leaders who've said, oh, I won't come to the meeting because I might stop people speaking. And I've had to have 3 conversations with them to say, it will be fine. The way in which AI works, it helps people, those barriers disappear. And she did eventually come and it was fine. But it took quite a little bit of convincing her. So I don't know if I answered her. Is there anything else in that question, Julie?
That was it.
That was
And
it,
then,
okay.
and then I think that some people are sharing what they the question, something they might do differently. One person shared, I like the idea of setting an intention before going into a mediation.
Right.
And then
Great,
another,
thank you.
and another person said, I will be looking from the perception of the people I work with and understand how to approach and how to approach.
Yeah.
Another person shared that one of the this is in capital, one of the powers of conscious discipline is the power of attention. What you focus on, you get more of. The other great powers of conscious discipline totally intersect with appreciative inquiry. Mahalo for reminding me of that. Mahalo for sharing. Mahalo means thank you, in case you don't know.
That's lovely. Lovely. Okay. Yeah, no, I do know actually, because I came to visit Joan once. I learned. Actually, just going back to that other question, it even works really well with children, and it's a great way of because when children can also talk about their strengths, they can talk as equals with a teacher or a governor or any kind of worker in the school. So generally the questions are designed so that everybody would feel comfortable answering them, and everybody can find an accessible experience that relates to the topic.
Great. I think by governor, you may mean the head of school, or here we would call it principal. Okay, I just wanted to check in on that.
Or trustees, the governors, they're a bit like the board.
Okay, got it, like the
helps
school
manage
board.
the school.
Another
Yes,
comment.
yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry. We having a little time delay. Another comment is, it makes me realize that it starts with our thoughts. If we wish to change, we need to redirect our thoughts to what's the positive intention of this obstacle.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yes. That's definitely, yeah, I just feel like, I'm an explorer in all this, and I'll have a go. So I like that question. What's the positive intention of this obstacle? Thank you for sharing.
Okay, let's see. Someone else is saying I needed to hear this today. Thank you so much.
Oh, nice.
Another question, this is directly to me, but I don't know if this is supposed to be. It says, it's kind of related. If parties to a mediation first present themselves in a highly charged, hostile manner, what do you do at the outset to diffuse their anger and animosity?
Yes, that's a very good question. And the answer, I think, would be really variable. But, what I would try to do is, can they access a good memory somewhere in their relationship in the past, or something that they appreciate about the person? And if that could be brought into the room, it creates a slightly different framework then for the conversation. And sometimes people might be so surprised by that question that they will actually genuinely look for the answer, and sometimes they might be blocked and not willing to go there. So one of the things I've found as an appreciative practitioner is to be sensitive to when it's going to land and when it isn't. And I might put out a sort of tentative, different kind of conversation starter. And then if it goes back to how terrible the weather is or the politics, I'll just let that happen. I might then just do internal conversation in my head differently, but I won't impose it on the other person.
Someone said, when people experience conflict, they're often tense, apprehensive, and even anxious. And as the facilitator or mediator, just smiling as you are delivering your opening statement causes people to relax. Yeah. You can actually see their shoulders go down if you watch body language.
Yes, so there's so many ways, isn't it, that we can influence the situation, and words and tone are just some of them, and those other things like smiling and doing relaxing. Yes, thank you. Another person commented, looking for past good things works frequently in divorce mediation. Okay. I'll give an example for something. Sometimes in mediations with kids, we'll say, oh, do you have a picture of your kids?
what do you love about your kids? And you can even write it on the whiteboard, and they can both be saying about all the things they like about their kids, you know, that they love about their kids. Or, you know, in what way is your ex a good father, a good mother? You know, you can definitely use that in mediation to help people.
Yes, yeah, that's lovely.
Someone said, I have also asked the exception question when someone tells me of their problem. What happens when there is an exception to this situation?
That's a nice phrase. That's new to me. I like that. Yes.
We are getting towards the end of our time together. Do you have any closing remarks before I ask people to take our survey, which I'm going to put in the chat?
Okay, no, I just saw a question about the video extract that we showed, and to say that the link to the video with the name is on the slides. And so when you get it, the moment you click onto YouTube, it'll also bring you up the longer version, which is, she's got a 15-minute one and she's got an hour one for that talk. So that's easy to find. And then otherwise, all I say is that it's very nice to be joining with you guys in another part of the world, especially a part that looks warm and brightly colourful. It's lovely, the screens that I can see. Really nice seeing you all. It's been great to share it here.
So thank you so much, Suzanne. A big virtual round of applause from everyone we can't see and we can see. We would really appreciate if you would take our survey about the talk, and I've put the link into the chat. We really appreciate all of you coming today. We appreciate when you give us your thoughts about today, and we do actually have on our form, what did you love, you know, so you can give some appreciations to Suzanne and us if you would like. We will share them with Suzanne. Please do check your email. We'll be sending out the slides, video link, and some of the links that Suzanne has shared with me. So as soon as we can get the video uploaded to our YouTube channel, we'll send that out for you. I do see quite a few mahalos and thank yous put into the chat. So and someone especially that I appreciate that that Suzanne was able to give a talk at what was 10 o'clock and now is 11 o'clock in the evening from all the way from Scotland. So thank you for joining us today. We'd love to see you next month. March 17th is going to be Diane Petropoulos on, what is the exact title? Hold on, let me get it in my mind again. Managing conflict in your workplace with emotional intelligence. So we'd love to see you there, and you'll be getting emails about that in the coming weeks. So thank you, and we will see you next time.
I think I see there's a question about books to read. So
sorry.
I would just suggest Conversations Worth Having. And then there's a couple of books from David Cooper Ryder. They tend to be a bit more academic. Jackie Kelm has done some really great books as well on appreciative living, if you look that up. But once you start looking for some AI books, you'll find many. And there's lots of online, there's in the States, there's a Center for Appreciative Inquiry, and there's also the Champlain College for Appreciative Inquiry. So yeah, I don't think it'll be hard to find too many things. Thank you all very much for your attention and your appreciation. It's been lovely to be here.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.